The Last of Us episode 1 came out last night on HBO, and like the fan that I was, I had to go see it. And so I waited until 8 p.m. Eastern time for me to sit down and watch this with my family and stuff, and we absolutely enjoyed it. Now, coming from a diehard fan that loves the game and sort of disapproved for the second one, which I don't mind it. I love that there's a second one, but I really didn't think that that was the best story that could have been written for it. This show is phenomenal. And what I will say about it is spoiler free for this whole video. The Last of Us TV adaptation was made by the same creator of Chernobyl, which is already wild enough. In fact, I think it was probably one of the coolest shows, Chernobyl, which I did watch at one point, and I picked it up right after the show to see how the work incorporated into The Last of Us, and it is phenomenal. Find it magnificent that Last of Us was made by the same makers of Chernobyl, who did such a good job at making such a dark atmosphere in Chernobyl, and able to execute that same level of dark atmosphere into The Last of Us. That's already a dark kind of game in its own sense, but it's filled with love too. The Last of Us was one of the most biggest games, and it won so many awards. If this show had probably screwed its first episode over, which it didn't because Neil Druckmann was involved in the making of it as well, which even though we don't like Neil Druckmann in the way he wrote The Last of Us 2, in the way he goes about things and such as social media, it really is just a good thing to see the execution of the game go into a show for new people. For a person that owns a HBO Max or HBO subscription, it is 100% a good idea to watch the show. And you don't even have to be playing the games. You don't have to have played the games at all. I played the game, so the whole time I was watching, I was catching on all the lines and all the things that was going on, and I was like, I know that. And even then, there are some sequences that are built for TV that are just not a part of the same game, but it doesn't feel as though it's out of place at all. In fact, it feels very in place. But this is just the first episode. We're talking only 8 more episodes, because there's only 8. Now, that does feel like a problem to me, but when a story is already set in stone and you already have the keys to make the story, it kind of begs the question of how many episodes you should do, and they're mostly an hour long. They're a good majority of time taken out. It could be, they're really just like a whole movie. So that's just a big thing. But there's also the fact that there's 9 episodes, and I feel like that's not too bad. I feel like 9 episodes are alright. I don't think they're too much. I know a lot of fans, maybe like me, would be like, hey, I want more episodes. I actually said that at one point until I saw how the show was executed, and I could just be happy with it. It is a phenomenal show, and it is portrayed in the best way. So if you actually have time to pick it up, I suggest you definitely do that. So yeah, that's really much about it. I know I'm a big Last of Us fan. If you look back at like my oldest YouTube videos, it was just me covering The Last of Us Remastered way after it was made, and I loved it. Now, I do want to talk about the actors, only the 2 main roles. But if you do remember, if you ever played the game, Marlene is also one of the friends and then enemies later on. And she is actually played by the same actor as the games did, which is phenomenal. And the way she carried herself over to play her own character in the TV show was phenomenal to see. I immediately recognized Marlene's voice when her actor came on the set and on the scene, and I thought it was amazing. Now, on the other hand, let's talk Pedro Pascal and Bella. Those two are really introduced together in a very rushed way. The way they were basically introduced is when Ellie in the game shows her arm. Spoilers if you haven't watched the show, but it's in the game. But there's things where like she shows her arm, look, I'm infected. You know what I mean? And it's like rushed. It's totally rushed in the show. Even though I'm not giving any context on how it's rushed. It's still a bit of a spoiler. I did promise that, so I'm sorry. But even then, there is so much introduction in the first half to where you feel like the daughter Sarah would have been probably the main character, but it's not. I already knew that because I was waiting to see till she died. Pedro Pascal and Belle haven't really made their big dynamic duo yet, and they're too stubborn as characters. But the biggest part about it is that they picked two decent characters to represent the in-game characters that are in The Last of Us. They're not exactly looking exactly like, although Pedro Pascal really narrows down the physique and appearance of Joel, which I was surprised about how well he also just carried into the main character of Joel as well. And I thought it was amazing how he did it. So nice job to Pedro Pascal. If you like Pedro Pascal as an actor in some way, shape, or form, he is phenomenal in the start of this show in The Last of Us as Joel. Now, as for Belle is honestly Bella Ramsey, who has done work in Game of Thrones most notably, is quite the actor. She's very fierce, she's very ignorant, and very, very stubborn. We don't know any soft side of her yet because of the fact that the show hasn't progressed as much. And at this point in time in the game, whereas it's in the show, she's just very ignorant towards everybody. She doesn't know anybody. But they do pick off Ellie as being more rough in this show, maybe to show her ignorance in a sense, which that will later be loosened up in the plot. But Bella Ramsey is a good Ellie, even though she doesn't look like Ellie at all. We can't really make that casting at all. But what we can say is that she plays a good Ellie and the good attitude of Ellie very well. So Bella Ramsey definitely does score well with Ellie. As for everything else, The Last of Us is still going on, and every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time is when it airs on HBO. So grab yourself an HBO Max subscription, grab yourself an HBO subscription, whatever or kind of form it is. And yeah, it's a good worthy show to see. It's not bad. In fact, it probably is one of the best ways for HBO to start out the new year. So yeah, that's really much what I wanted to say. Take care, guys.